Thanks for joining Soccerex TV. We're talking about social media and the abuse of footballers. The stick they seem to get, terrible stick at times it is as well. In the company of Phil Catrick, the press officer at Gillingham Football Club, Troy Townsend from Kick It Out, and the former Republic of Ireland international, former Nottingham Forest assistant manager, former Scotland... Stephen Reed's with us. First of all, let's clear it up. What are we calling you these days? What title do you go by?
I'm finding my feet a little bit with it. I think when you've been in coaching and playing football for so long, I think to kind of put a new title on things is a little bit daunting at the moment. But it's developing. This kind of almost helping and support service is developing, and I'm already seeing a few players and a few coaches and sort of helping them on their own journeys.
I mean, you're going to be helping players. What kind of reaction have you had from the football community to what you're doing?
It's been massive. Troy probably knows a little bit about it from my time coaching at Crystal Palace when I sort of stepped away and had a sort of break from it. Then I think this time I've kind of gone into it with a bit more of a plan in my mind, what I want it to look like, and sort of cleared up a little bit some of the reasons behind why I've taken the decision. The feedback and the response has been incredible, to be honest, and there's been quite a few that have reached out that have faced similar sort of issues in their own careers, and I've been into a few organisations as well, just to really network a little bit, meet people and get a better feel into some of the issues that we're facing sort of from the mental health point of view in the game.
Well, I'm sure it's something we'll talk about as we go. Social media. Phil Catrick at Gillingham Football Club. How important is social media to the Gills?
I think like most football clubs up and down the country now, it's critical, Rob, and it's becoming more important as each season goes by. As an incredible influence, I would probably say 85-90% of footballers have an account of some description, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So a large part of my day is kind of monitoring platforms to see who's saying what, and hopefully saying the right things. But I think social media in general, if it's used properly, it's a fantastic tool. But unfortunately, if it's used in the wrong way, not just by players, I might add, then it can become quite toxic. And it's obviously we've all seen incidences where people have been abused, and that's not good. So you just have to keep an eye on it, and it's becoming more important as each season goes by to make sure that it's monitored properly and used properly.
Troy, how much do you spend and Kick It Out talking about social media?
Oh, well, now that I'm doing another hour with you, Rob, quite a long time to be totally honest. Listen, it took up a large part of last season for me. I think last season, well, I know for a fact last season was my busiest season in regards to supporting players, not just on the field of play, but the impact of, the abuse that they receive on social media. And every season it continues to grow, Unfortunately, I love social media and the interaction I get with so many different people who I would probably have never had the opportunity to have met, or to have managed to put 200 odd characteristics together so that we can have a communication on the platforms. But unfortunately, and more, the social media platforms do not monitor their own platforms for the hate that exists, and they allow certain language terminologies, emojis to flourish. So unfortunately, it's taken up a lot of time, and we're only into a new season, and it's taken up a lot of time again already.
Are people coming to you, Troy, and are they confused by it? Are they saying to you, why am I getting it? I guess there's a large element of it as racist abuse. Is there almost a confusion to say, why me?
No, not a confusion anymore. What players say now is that they thoroughly expect it. They know what the platforms are about. They know that the social media platforms are not doing enough to eliminate it. You've got the government who have been working on this online harms bill for 6, 7, 8 years, and it's still not been published. So the players are well aware, and that's what's driving some of the players away from the platforms, to be totally honest, because they're fed up. They feel that nothing will be done, and they stop reporting as well, which is something that we don't want to see. But I can totally understand why players are not engaging with any kind of process anymore, because it will happen again the following week or the same next match day, So this is in the hands of the bodies. I don't think social media is going to change in any given way after the conversations that I've had, particularly with Twitter and Instagram. And so it's either you're going to have to put up with it, or you leave the platforms or create something else.
Phil Catrick, how did Gillingham, I guess there's abuse to the players, abuse to the staff, chairman. How does Gillingham Football Club deal with it?
Depends on the severity of what has been posted, Rob, quite frankly. I mean, players know that if they're on the platform, then there is going to be a certain amount of criticism. But of course, there is a very fine line between constructively critical and being abused online. Our chairman, for instance, has received quite a lot of hard abuse over the last probably 12 to 15 months, and he's now on an extended break from running the football club. I think most players here use it very, very well, and we're very clear to them if you're not sure whether something should go out or not, and if you're not sure, then don't post at all. I think some post maybe once every couple of weeks now, rather than once every couple of days like they might have used to. But as Troy pointed out just earlier on, I think the abuse has got worse as the seasons have gone on. I think players progressively are starting to use it less. Stephen,
you've well documented your own struggles with mental health when you were as a player. Panic attacks on the pitch was amazing to read about. Personally, if a player is receiving abuse on social media, I guess this is going to be one big area for you in talking and dealing with a player's mental health.
Oh, massively. And I mean, the actual performance and doing the job alone is difficult enough, without the abuse from social media. I mean, if I think about my last couple of years of being a player, Twitter was just probably not in its infancy, of course but it was just starting to take off a little bit more. It was just starting to, I'd see myself as being lucky that I almost missed this wave now of the abuse. I remember my last season at West Brom, I had to take myself off social media, and we're talking about 7-8 years ago, and we're still talking about the same problems now, that some players are having to take themselves off social media. I know for a personal point of view as well, it would have affected me massively as a player. The abuse that would have been coming in. You can take the little bit of criticism about a performance, what you're doing on the pitch, but the personal abuse has just got to a level now where, Troy speaks about it frequently. It's actually what is getting done. What are the sanctions? For me personally, a couple of ideas in my mind, which I'm sure we'll go on to, is just an accountability, having to put your personal details in to find the culprits quicker and deal with them, because we're getting the issues now where a lot of players are used to it, might not report it, so it goes on and on. They know nothing will get done, so the abuse continues. It's in a real toxic place for me at the moment.
Troy, what response have you had when you're talking to government bodies, when you're talking to Twitter, when you're talking to Insta? What are they saying to you?
I think for the first time that I can remember, the governing bodies of the game and those that kind of oversee in these areas have come together for the first time powerfully in discussing these issues, and then taking a plan to, Twitter and Meta, who obviously now own Facebook. But that's where the breakdown for me happens, is that, I was on a number of calls last year with Twitter, having told everyone that I was on a number of calls for the last 6-7 years, and nothing's ever changed. And whilst there's an openness to have the discussion, there's not an openness to change what that platform looks like. So Stephen quite rightly said there that, there should be the accountability element of it, is somebody having to input their details so that we can verify who that person is if they are spouting any abuse. Well, the social media platforms are not open to that. They don't want to see that. They don't want to govern their platforms in that way. We then get the excuse that, these people are abroad and they can't be found because the other, police organisations are not kind of helping the English police out. Well, there's some stats that came out only about 6-7 months ago, after the Euros, that said that actually the abuse was 50-50. So if we can't do 50% that are abroad, why don't we do the 50% that are here that are still, able to target the players in the way that they do? And my issue predominantly is that until we can get that government influence, so until that online harms bill crosses the line, finally comes into play, finally holds those platforms accountable, finally makes there a financial situation that they may lose out financially, then I think we're going to be hosting, or Rob, you might be hosting events like this forever and a day, which, is crazy, to be totally honest.
It's fantastic to see Soccerex back in Miami. We're incredibly honored to have them in our city, for them to be committed to coming to Miami on a regular basis and every time continuing to grow this fantastic event.
It's so nice to be back here and in person and around people again at an event where you have some of the most influential and important people in soccer in our region and from around the world. It's nice to see smiling faces and people that are back here and really enjoying it.
We needed this opportunity to get together, to talk to each other, to exchange ideas.
I think more than ever it's important. I mean, we've just come off almost 3 years of remote access and computer screens, and there's nothing quite like being in an event and the excitement and the buzz that you get from that.
I mean, it's just incredible, the crowd here from Central, South America, from Europe, from the Far East. It's one big family, one big party.
There looks to be a lot of good new innovative technology, which for me as a performance director and sports scientist is exciting for me to see how we can develop the game with different kinds of technology.
The face-to-face social interaction that has left us over the last couple of years, that's how relationships get formed, and that's how connections get established, that's how business gets done.
It's interesting to learn and see the reality and not only, papers and, regulations, so it's great.
I mean, our industry is one big family, all trying to grow the game in whatever aspect of the business that we're in.
Troy, when players come to you, are you actively saying to them now, get off social media?
No, I would never say that. I would never say that for a number of reasons. It's not the player issue, is it? It's the perpetrator issue. It's the platform issue. It's the making sure that your platforms are fit for purpose for everybody to use. Remember, we've got to also say this, there is a lot of fantastic engagement on social media, a lot of fantastic engagement. And you take players away from that and you lose that element that the real fans say is we're not in touch with our players anymore. Let's not deny it. Any of those social media platforms that Phil mentioned at the start, brilliantly, by the way. I can only use Twitter and Instagram, so the TikTok and all that, that's not me. But those are not only of significance to the players, but they're also of monetary value. So why should we deny players from that monetary value that they can have, in terms of, sponsorships and stuff like that? Why should we deny those? Because they're being abused.
Just on that one, and I'm the same. I'd never say to a player, stop using social media. But for me personally, when I played, I came off it. He was having a difficult season at West Brom with, 3-4 months to go of the season. I just did not need it in my life in a relegation battle. And I have had those conversations with players at clubs that I've been at.
I think if a player came to me, Steve, sorry to cut over, if a player came to me and said, look, this and this, and these are the screenshots I've been having, it might be you had that conversation. Well, in your best interests, if you don't want to use the platforms, then remove yourself from it. If you're being affected mentally because of this, there is no benefit for you being on it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I wouldn't go to the player and said, take your accounts down, because it's not really my place to say that. But if a player came to me and said, do you think this is the best course of action? Based on what he says to me, I probably would. Yeah. Well, take yourself off and give yourself a break from it.
Because it has to have an effect on your mental well-being. Unless you're of a certain makeup that it's water off a duck's back. We all have difficult moments, especially the performance element of playing. So if you're throwing in, because I think as well, the players can be 24-hour plugged into life, to coming off the pitch. It's not downtime. Might pick up the phone. It's maybe have a little flick on Instagram, on Twitter. All of a sudden, there's 100 tweets of abuse. They're just constantly plugged into, the performance, the delivering, the abuse. It's almost like a 24/7 for some players, not all, but it's very difficult to get away from it.
Stephen, can I just stay with you just for a second? Because I think sometimes people, fans, ourselves included, who've never actually played the game, we forget these are people. I know it sounds a sort of very simplistic thing to say. I'm sitting here thinking, there's poor Harry Maguire. He's getting absolutely mullered from social media, possibly from Manchester United fans. And I mean, you cannot tell me, no matter who you are, that does not have a detrimental mental effect.
I'd imagine it has done. Obviously he's had a difficult time, Harry Maguire, performances wise. And I'm sure a lot of that will be the mental side of the game and having to deal with all the criticism that's come his way. I mean, when I was coming through at Millwall and playing, if I got a 5 in the South London press, even that would affect me in a negative way going into the next game. Or I might have a little look on a fans forum, which, sometimes players do. And you see the way I was a little bit, my makeup, that one comment sometimes for me would give me would have a real negative impact on my mental health and performance, let alone jumping forward 20 odd years and looking at your phone. Or my last season at West Brom, when after we're getting beat, it's retire now, Reed, legs are gone, blah, blah, blah. It had to come off. But it was bad enough, 5 in a newspaper when I was 17, 18 years old playing at Millwall. Can you imagine the volume of abuse that these guys are dealing with now? I mean,
I can't believe Reedy's got a 5, by the way, as a 17-year-old. But yeah,
that was every week. That was every week in the paper, to be fair.
I was just going to say, but the impact is not only on the sports person, so the individual that's playing on the field of play or plying their trade as a sportsman, sportswoman. The impact is also to those that are closely connected. The family members, the cousins, those that also troll the social media accounts to make sure that, to see what is being said. So I do it with my own son. You troll the social media accounts to see if someone's talking positively or negatively. You just do it because it's almost drives you to it. It's the kind of thing that you want to see. Obviously, after a great game and a goal and a whatever else, you know what you're going to see, but you also want to see the ones like Reedy said, when he has got a 5 and you think to yourself, wow, I wonder if everyone saw it that way. And then you see the comments come in. So there's an impact broader than the individual, the player. Of course, it's their social media account, but there's an impact quite widely. I remember when Tammy Abraham missed the penalty in the European Super Cup a few years ago against Liverpool, and he brushed it off. But it wasn't till he went round his mum's house, and his mum said, why is everyone talking about you in that way? Why are they describing you by the colour of your skin and not by your performance? And his mum wasn't on social, but someone told his mum. So then that's when it really affected Tammy more than anything else. And I think sometimes I think we understand it, but these people in those positions that make the decisions don't understand the knock-on effect. You're not hurting one person, you're hurting multiple people in and around that person.
You just beat me to it, probably as
Sorry.
always. I was going to ask about... No, I was going to genuinely just going to move on to ask about you and Andros Townsend. I mean, he's injured at the moment. He must be having all kinds of doubts, worries, positivity at times. It's a difficult situation. He's got a bad injury. Do you discuss social media and the effect it has on him as a family, as it were?
No, not anymore. I had to when he first jumped on there, when he was a young whippersnapper who felt that he could just post anything that he wanted to do online without fear, and got a couple of slaps on the wrist by Tottenham at the time, and fines for certain posts that he was making. And I think after then he knew that I was watching his social media account, because there was one where I had to tell him to take it down within 30 seconds, and he was only a 19-year-old at that time. But I think the older you get, the more mature you get, you know when to engage and you know when to take yourself away. So bad performance day, Andros takes himself away and will take himself away for quite a long time. Injury time, he has taken himself away from social media massively, and has only just, so he got injured in March and has only just reintroduced himself back into social because he sees the end line when he's probably coming back to playing.
I do think as well, I think some of the media channels have got a responsibility. I'm starting to get sick and tired now of some of these media outlets that will post a picture of a player that might be having a bad time or had a bad game and say, describe this player in one word. Or you sometimes find that some of them are almost stirring up a reaction from the public. Describe this £50 million signing in one word, when you know full well he's having a tough time, whoever that might be. Do you know what I mean? Some of them got to tread really carefully into actually stoking a lot of the sort of aggression and abuse, and there's a responsibility there, I think, from some of...
Yeah, you're right. It's almost that element of clickbait, isn't it?
Yeah, and prodding. Managers getting interviewed now. Managers getting interviewed, and they're just this, and they're prodding, and players talking to people, maybe fans, but just being on their guard because they're not sure whether they're being recorded or being filmed, and it might go viral on social media. I think it's just such a tough world out there with the social media and how things are stoked up.
I remember doing an interview with Jason Brown, the former Welsh goalkeeper, 10 years ago. And I flagged it up 2 years ago to Jason that, remember this interview we did? And that was all about online abuse. And he showed me the abuse. The abuse was horrendous. He showed me how much it did to his mental well-being, the trauma that he had to listen to, the words that I'm using, the language that I'm using, the trauma that he had to go through that affected his ability to keep goal. So basically these people, what they're doing, they're not only just abusing you, they're affecting your ability to do your job. And yet we still don't care. We still don't care enough that, Jason makes a mistake, he's going to get slaughtered, and he knew it. But now what was happening is that he's half thinking about the abuse that he might get And remember, he's a goalkeeper, the last line of defence. You make a mistake, it gets highlighted so much more. And he's worried during game time that if he does make that mistake, it's not the fans behind the goal that he's worried about. It's the fans on social media that he was concerned about. And that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I wish I had the answers, fellas. I've got to be honest. I mean, you're speaking to somebody who was encouraged to go on Twitter and sort of did about 3 tentative months on it and just got off it. Pretty much for the reasons Stephen was talking about before. That 100 people are nice to you, and then you get one absolutely battering you, and human nature dictates that it's the one that's hammering you that stays with you. But I think your point is absolutely right, and it's difficult to know how to control it when you've got, describe this guy in one word and everything out there. It's almost like we're sitting here like the boys with the finger in the dike, and I can't feel a great deal of optimism. I've got to be honest with you. I don't know about you guys.
It's unquestionably got worse. It has got worse because I think most people who are using it feel there is no accountability for what they're saying. So they can continue doing it with absolutely no threat of anything happening to them. And until that time comes round, as Troy and Steve have both said, nothing's going to change because there's no accountability. So until the social media firms get a grip on it, I just think it's going to carry on exactly the same.
Well, I think for me personally, for the players especially that have got to perform, I see very little benefit in them being on social media purely from a performance and doing your job aspect. I get it in terms of the brands and the football clubs, maybe commercial stuff. But actually, for you to be at your best and go and perform on a Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, what are the benefits of you being on social media? Because I see very, very few. The people that you really care about, your family, your close friends, obviously you've got to impress the manager and the coaches to get in the team. But effectively, they're the ones that, whose opinion really matters. Whether you're on social media or not, I'd really struggle with it now. If I was playing now, I'm not sure I'd be on it purely for those reasons, because playing was hard enough for me as it was. I'd maybe have a bad game and not watch match of the day on the Saturday night. Now you don't have a good, if you have a bad game now, the players must be just trying to avoid their phones and the social media bits and pieces all over the place.
Troy?
Do you know when it hit home to me was speaking to a player, because I don't want to name anybody, but speaking to a player who, when we were on the Zoom call, lifted up his 2-year-old son and said that even he's getting abuse. So he's getting abuse because he's the son of the father who apparently is not good enough to represent the football club, despite being the captain, by the way. And on that call, I didn't understand what he was doing, but he was trying to get his son. And he lifted his son up and said, even he gets it. And when he gets it, that becomes a massive concern of mine, And, the people that are on that call, the Twitters, they all said the right things. They all said, wow, we didn't know it was that far, but still they've not done anything about it. So for me, face value is they're not really concerned about a 2-year-old child getting abused because his dad's a professional footballer. They're not really concerned, because if you were, you'd actually do something and implement things to make sure that the change that is needed and required happens immediately.
Phil, Troy, Stephen, listen, thanks very much for your contributions today. We'll follow, obviously, with great interest. Best of luck to the three of you. We'll speak to you soon. Thanks a lot.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Rob.
Rob.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.